This is Phillip Stutts, author of Fire Them Now, The 7 Lies Digital Marketers Sell. And I'm on the show today to talk to you about the steps it takes to get presidents elected and how those principles and those marketing strategies can help your business grow. Please tune in. I look forward to meeting you soon.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. Let me ask you, are you committed to up-leveling your leadership? Are you a political junkie? I know I am. Have you ever considered that political strategies used to elect congressmen, congresswomen, even presidents could be deployed to help you win at business and win big? How? Stay tuned, you're about to find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes on our Facebook page. Go look for us on Facebook, Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, or wherever it is that you tune into podcasts. We always need your help in staying relevant, so please go over there and subscribe, review, and share. And you can also catch us on traditional radio stations all the way from Las Vegas to Quantico. Yes, we're across the United States, everywhere. Just check us out. You can also find us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, regular viewer, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Spotify, Alexa, Google Home, to say play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, C-suite leader, sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity, you know that we live in what is pretty much a media circus. The left calls out the right calls out the left. There's a new scandal every 15 minutes, and before the week is over, you've already forgotten about half the crap that happened at the first part of the week. But let me ask you, is this chaos, or is it organized to look like chaos? Furthermore, you may not like the players, but you got to ask yourself, if you had the skills and the tools, would you play the game? If you could, would you use it to make you the top of your game? Well, let's find out together. My guest on this episode is Phillip Stutts. Phillip Stutts comes from the cutthroat world of political marketing. Among his victories over the last 2 decades of experience, he's worked on campaigns with billions of dollars of political ad spend and has contributed to over 1,200 election victories, including hundreds of U.S. House campaigns, dozens of U.S. Senate campaigns, and even 3 presidential victories. Phillip plays the game of political marketing at the highest possible level, battling it out with fierce competition, as I said, multi-billion-dollar budgets, and a win-or-die mentality. He's one of the masterminds behind the curtain of the political marketing. He's the author of Fire Them Now, the seven lies digital marketers sell, and the truth about political strategies that help businesses win. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome entrepreneur, author, keynote speaker, the man with over 1,200 victories, 41 awards, the guy who's been in the fight for 7 years with a rare, incurable disease and remains the reigning champion, Mr. Phillip Stutts.
Man, that's a hell of an introduction there, Dov. Honored to be here. Let's roll.
Well, mate, I mean, you're the megastar. You know, Gary V, CNN, you're all over.
Have you, if you talk to my wife, we'll get a completely different answer than that.
Well, you know, listen, when they give me the applause to come on stage, I'm like, yeah, can we take this and send it to my missus too? I understand. So I really want to thank you for being on the show. It's taken a while to get you here. I know that. And you're a busy lad. You got a lot of really powerful stuff going on.
Yeah.
As I said, you've been doing a lot of amazing things. You've worked with Fortune 500. You've worked with political campaigns. But I want to start off by asking you something that I like to start off by asking my guests, and that's this. When you think about, you know, we are bombarded with people of influence.
Yeah.
And a lot of big names, but who is somebody who really influenced you? Who's somebody who had impact on you that we likely wouldn't know or certainly wouldn't suspect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, it's really been this metamorphosis I've had over the last 7-8 years into helping businesses grow. And that would be a guy named Keith Cunningham. He's an influencer you may or may not have heard of. But not the kind of influencer that you're thinking about. He doesn't really play on social media. He is a guy that made $100 million before he was like 35,
Wow.
and he lost every single penny. And he went broke, he went bankrupt, and he built it all back.
Wow.
And that guy's been a mentor to me. He's also Rich Dad in the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. And
he's the real rich dad.
He's the rich dad in the book, in Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he is probably the niche that Keith Cunningham has that has made such an impact on me, Dov, is that he is not about growth. He's about keeping what you have and keep making sure you don't do dumb stuff that take your business to failure. And so for that, rare is it in this environment that there are people out there telling you, don't do this, don't do that. You know, measure everything you do, play it smarter, play it safer. And I think every business owner needs to hear those things sometimes, because we're always thinking about how we 10X and 30X and do all that kind of stuff. And so I think Keith has been the biggest influence on me in my life.
That's very interesting. As you said, particularly interesting to me because, as you said, everybody's focused on 10X. And one of the things I've talked about in many of my programs is what I know people who've 10X their business and gone bankrupt because they didn't have the infrastructure in place, and it just crashed their entire.
Oh my God. And I'll even say this is part of that influence. Our corporate marketing arm has grown insane in the last 12 months. And I had to sit back and say, no more business development for 6 months. We're going to put all of the pieces in place that can meet the demand that it levels to. And so for the last 6 months, we have done zero business development in our business. We've gone back to optimizing and make sure. Keith has a great quote. How much money would you have if you had all the clients you always landed? And I think that is a powerful quote to remember, that you don't need to constantly get new clients. You actually can make a lot more money by working with the current clients and making them even more successful.
Yeah, I think there's often you know, it's like even when I think about millennials and the jumping jobs, and it's the same thing I see it in business, not with millennials, but with everybody, is this jumping business to the next big thing. I got to grasp with that, as opposed to taking care of what I've got. And so that's a really important thing.
And just think about the niche in the marketplace. That is a great niche. I believe everybody should have their own niche. It's one of the things I preach, whether it's in clients or whether it's I'm on stage. That is a great niche. There's not a lot of people out there promoting that. They're promoting something that everybody's playing in. So I like Keith a lot. Yeah.
Now you've said something that I think is important for us to start with. You know, we are seeing a booming economy, and we're also, people not paying attention, but there's also a booming U.S. deficit that's going right alongside of that. But you say there's a coming economic disruption. First off, why do you say that, and what do you see that disruption as being?
Yeah, I think I can give you an example, but the example I'll give you, you could say this is every industry in America, in America, in the world right now. The global economy is changing. Look, I talk about this in the book. I mean, it's not automated vehicles that are changing. That's coming. That's going to be here very soon. China and America are in an arms race over it right now. It is the second and third order consequences of that. What happens to police departments when they can't issue parking tickets? Then how do governments collect money if there are no parking tickets or speeding tickets? What happens to ambulance chasing lawyers? This may be a good thing. That when we have 99% of accidents in America, in the world are going to, eventually go away because the automated cars are that much safer. The one that is crazy that people never think about is what happens to someone on an organ donor list. If there are, in America, 35,000 people died from car accidents a couple of years ago. That was the last stats that came out. What happens to people on organ donor lists? Where do they get organ donations from in the future? And so I'm giving you one example. Another example is the construction industry. I do a lot of work with construction companies. Right now, they are 3D print. South by Southwest, I think last year, they 3D printed a 400 square foot house in 24 hours. It cost $10,000. What happens to that worker industry when you can print a house that is that much, that can be printed instead of built with human hands? In China or Japan last year, in 1 month, they 3D printed a 4,000 square foot house in 1 month that could withstand an 8.0 earthquake. So what happens to insurance companies in the earthquake regions of the world when they have homes that don't need as much insurance anymore? I live in Florida in Hurricane Alley. What happens when those homes are so safe, they're fortresses, and you don't need as much crazy insurance? I mean, it is insane the amount of insurance I have to pay to live in Florida. So it's not just the industries that are being disrupted, it's the second and third order consequences of those.
Yeah, one of the things I talked about in a previous show was 4-level, 5-level consequential decision making. The example I've given out is I'm a fan of electric cars. I like electric cars. I like getting away from the oil industry. I like all that. But let's remember that you have to plug your car into the electrical system, which is an old grid and is falling apart. And that some of that is fueled by either coal or gas. You go, well, at least it's gas. Well, a lot of argument about fracking. So you've got that side of it and the potential problems there. And you go, okay, well, what about, the batteries? Well, what are the batteries made of? They're made of lithium. Where does lithium come from? It's mined. Who mines it? Children in Africa. So a lot of the time we solve a problem on the surface and we don't think these couple of levels down. So is that what you see as this massive disruption of economics? Is that thinking in those multiple levels?
There are so many. You nailed it. It's so many different orders of consequence. Here's the thing. I can't tell you how many businesses I come into and they go, oh, no. I know everything's changing. I know my industry probably disrupted in 10 years, but I put my head in the sand. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to change. I'm not a business consultant. I'm a marketer, right? And so I try to look at it at how you improve your marketing and from a disruptive world. And not, it's almost this. You always have to be an outlier in whatever you do. You have to think like an outlier. You have to go wherever other people aren't. It's like one of the things that I completely teach my clients right now is that, and especially in our marketing, is if you run, everybody's saying, here, I'm going to hold my phone up. Everybody's on their phone. Everybody's eyeballs are right here all the time. So that's where your ads need to go. And it's not that I don't think you should do digital marketing. I own 2 digital marketing agencies, actually. But what I think is you have to build relationships with your customers, or in my case, also in the political side with voters, and then use your marketing as a reinforcement, not as a lead gen. It's so hard. There's so much competition. If you're trying to eliminate risk and grow your bottom line, the way you do it is it's this. Hey, I'm coming back to your first question on the influencer. If I'm able to build a bigger relationship with a customer base of a client of mine, and then use them as the marketing tool, we have seen exponential growth in those companies. If you run out and say, I just need to throw a digital ad on, I mean, how many people click through digital ads of a company they've never heard of or a product they've never seen, unless it's some really interesting product,
right?
Or the creative is outrageously good, which costs a lot of money. That just doesn't happen. And so what I try to say is, in this disruptive world, What we are lacking, what we want, and what we yearn for is deeper connections, emotional connections. In politics, that's all I've ever done. This is not a disruption for me. I have to take my politician and find out where the voter is, what the voter cares about, and I have to tailor all my marketing towards that voter more than anything else. For example, when a candidate sits down with me, they say, hey, I want to talk about 10 things, right? 10 things I want to talk to the voters about. And I say, well, hold on, stop. Let's go take a poll. Now we're much more advanced than this, but for this podcast, we're going to keep it simple for everybody.
Sure.
We go out and we take a poll, and the poll is, what do the voters care about in that district, in that state, in the whole, in the United States, the country, whatever. And then I find that there are two things that candidate wants to talk about that the voters care about, and they care about at a very high degree. They're very passionate about it. Now I have found the connection, right? So now I've got two things. I'm not talking about 10 things. I'm talking about two things. That's all we're going to do. And we run campaigns on those two things. No, nothing else. That's all we talk about. And that is the foundation for winning political campaigns, is we care about what the voters think, and then we tailor our message, whether that's the candidate talking to voters in person or whether that's our creative and our ad strategy.
But
and so,
isn't that true with all leadership? I mean, I think that we've all, I even myself with my background, I can talk about a lot of different things, and I like talking about a lot of different things, but not everybody's interested in a lot of things. And I think it's a really important thing that you're saying there, because I just did an article that I wrote about the new normal, and I was talking about how people are pursuing this new normal. We are moving towards a new normal, but people politically, you and I have had political chats, but politically, people are saying, we've got to get back to normal, and I'm like, dude, normal's done. Normal's over. Yeah. You've got to create a new normal, because there is a new normal, and it's called Donald Trump.
Right.
And it's that version of the Republican Party is the new normal. It doesn't matter whether you like it or don't like it. But one of the things, the reason I brought it up is because one of the things you just said is that Trump goes back to his base every time and talks about immigration and in the form of the wall or whatever it is. But that's where he keeps knocking the nail on the head. And everybody else is like, well, I don't know if these people get it. But he's talking to who is listening.
Yeah.
And that's the point. They don't care that he's a misogynist. They don't care that he may have done X or Y or Z. He talks to the thing they care about. Teach us, Phil, because you are a master at this. Teach us how to do that as leaders. Teach us how to do that in our companies. When you talk about being an outlier, how do we get to that? Because it's so easy for us to have as you said, a big list and go, well, I want to talk about these 8 great things about us.
So such a good point. So let me take a step back and let me tell you why. And we just talked about the disruption that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
In 2004, George W. Bush ran for re-election, and I was his get out the vote director for the whole country.
Right.
And in that particular election, we used consumer data and voter data, and we combined them and were able to target voters on what they cared about. And in that moment, it was the most disruptive moment in the history of American politics. That's the reason we won the race, was we targeted voters more precisely than it had ever been done until 2008, when we got fat and happy for 4 years and Barack Obama came in and he combined that data with social media. And at 2008, that became the most disruptive moment in the history of American politics until 2016, when Donald Trump took data, social, and branding, as you just stated, and hammered those 3 components, and that became the most disruptive moment in political history. So we've seen this trend in politics.
Yes.
Seen it forever and ever. And the reason we see it in politics is because every 4 years is a new election, or actually it could be every 2 years. And if you aren't innovating constantly in our business, you are completely gone. You're dead, because if you lose too much, then you win. If you lose more than you win, you're gone. You're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we think about has to be about disruption and innovation. That's everything we think about. And so when I wrote the book, I said, well, my God, we're on the forefront of this disruption. We're on the forefront of being innovative and getting past the disruption successfully. Right. How can that apply to businesses, which gets to your question?
Yeah.
It's very simple. From a marketing standpoint, It is a 5-step process that I will release in my next book coming out in the future. But I call it the undefeated marketing system, because in all honesty, every business that we've worked with that has followed this process now, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of businesses that refuse to do it. When they followed it, they've grown. Every one of them have grown their bottom line, every single one of them. The reason that businesses don't is because they say to me, no, I don't want to follow a system. I want to get rich quick pill in my marketing. And I go, I don't have the get rich quick pill. Like, it doesn't exist in this, unless you give me $50 million, I can turn that into 75, but how many people are going to hand over 50 million on day one? That's just not the way it works.
Right.
And the system is, you absolutely have to understand your customer base. And so, one of the things I did was I went out and created a partnership with the largest data collection company in America. And we have an exclusivity deal with them. I paid a licensing fee to be with them. And we literally can take a customer base and track everything they do, not what they say, what they do.
Now, let's just pause there, because I think that's right there is an important thing, because that's one of the things that, because I was going to bring up polls with you later, but we know polls lie, because what people will say versus what they'll do is incredibly different. They don't want to admit that they don't like, for instance, immigration. So they won't put that in because they don't want to appear to be racist, but then they'll vote against that. So that's a
100%.
Really key point.
And didn't we see that in the election in 2016? Exactly. Right. So you nailed it, right?
So I really wanted people to grasp that, because, as a marketer, you're having people actually grab that. That's not some ethereal concept that Donald Trump pulled off or somebody else pulled off. This is how it actually works. You can't actually trust. You actually have to pay attention to both what they say and what they do.
100%. I mean, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing about the data. What people don't realize today is that Facebook is not a social media company, they're a data company. Google is not a search engine, it's a data company. And I don't do this is not Google Analytics. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something very deep. Like, we have psychological scientists on our data team that can take the data and tell us how people think, how they feel, the values they have in life. We absolutely know the platforms they're on in chronological order. And so I get all this data back after 30 days on a client. And now I can build the second step, which is a strategy or a plan. Like, I don't guess. I don't come to a client and go, we have great ideas. Let me throw out a couple things and let's spitball and throw in there. Like, that's not what we do. And you can't work with me unless you undergo this data project, because I need to know what the data says. It doesn't lie. That's why we convert on so much for so many of our clients. So we take the data, we build a plan around it, and then we do a rebrand as well. Because for me, what businesses don't get is that their brand is their resume. If you're interviewing somebody, Dove, and you pull up a resume, you look at it for 3 seconds and you throw it in the garbage can, right? But you can make a judgment on that resume immediately. And that's what a brand is for a company. And it blows my mind that people don't get this. I hate websites. I think they're ridiculous. But by the way, I change my website every 2 years. Every one of my websites for all of my companies gets a complete rebrand every 2 years, because that is how I'm judged. Yeah. So we do a total rebrand on people to get them aligned with what the data wants, the verbiage on their website or in their marketing materials, or the way their salespeople talk needs to come out of what the customer wants, not what the business wants to say. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I'm guilty of it, and I don't know a leader who isn't.
Right, we all are, right. And then we take. So I got a really cool example. But what we do is we take the data, we take the rebrand, we take the plan, and then we test about 10 different concepts, because based on what the data told us. And then we're going to find which one rises to the top, right? So there's a lot of A/B testing. We recently did one, and I want to dig into this concept. Well, like, I come from politics, so I love comparison advertising, like going, I call it going negative in the book. I write a whole chapter in the book on how businesses can do this. But one of the companies we just worked with, we tested 10 concepts. They were a huge supplement company, an 8-figure supplement company. And we found out that their customer base hated soda. Sounds obvious, but how would you know that unless the data told you? Right. We also found out that 50% of their market was vegan or vegetarian. So we said, okay, so we ran 10 different tests. 2 of those were an anti-soda ad. So we picked a bite. We picked a fight with the soda companies. Who in their customer base, Dove, would be offended that we picked a fight with the soda company? Nobody.
Nobody.
Like, their customer base doesn't like
They
soda.
don't
We
like
found that in
soda,
the
yeah.
data.
Right.
Then we also know that they're vegan and vegetarian. So we ran all these ads. The top 2 ads of all 10 that we ran, vegan and vegetarian finished number 2. Okay, and because that's where most of their customer base was. But the number 1 ad was the comparison ad, and here's what happened: we had less impressions on the digital front. I hate impressions, but at least it's a visual of how many people looked at the ad, or at least scanned it. We had less impressions with the negative ad, but we had a 2x click-through over the top-rated positive ad, the vegan vegetarian, and we had a 20% higher conversion rate over the second best tested ad. Why? Because ultimately everybody's trying to find deeper connections, and when you can find something that people go, yeah, I don't like soda, I am going to click through those guys. Oh, that's the kind of supplement I want, and then they convert over. We know in politics how to get it raw emotion, right? Sometimes you love it, most of the times you hate it. In politics or in business, it's the principle, it's not the same in execution. And so that's sort of phase 4 for us. And then phase 5 is, now that we know what works, we're going to shove all the dollars into what we've proven works from the data through the testing. And then we're going to really go in on the full budget with what works. And that formula has literally worked for every business we've worked with.
That makes perfect sense to me.
And if a business comes to us and says, let's skip steps 3 and 4, it never works the way they want it to. So I don't have a get rich quill. I have a get rich quick pill. I have a get rich the right way pill that works, and it's backed by data and it's proven.
You said something that one of our companies is called the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership, and we teach people how to become speakers and leaders.
Wow.
And one of the things that, we talk about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability and all those things to connect, as you
totally.
But one of the things I talk about in there that people don't like, and I say, I need to know this, who's the enemy?
Yeah.
And they say, what do you mean? If your presentation is coming out, who's the enemy? And they go, there is no enemy. Then it's not going to work. And they go, what do you mean? And I said, because the mind is already designed. That's how the ego mind is designed to protect. Therefore, it needs an enemy, and you have to give an enemy. Now, the enemy can be conceptual, right? So it can be othered. Like the immigrants, that's an othered, generalized example. It can be a specific. It can be Donald Trump. That's a specific. It can be butter. It can be margarine. It can be soda. It can be sugar. It can be high fructose corn syrup. But if you don't have that, people don't fully grab on. They might love you, but they need an enemy too, because here's the thing, and I want everybody to get this, because it's so much of what you're saying, and it's so much for what you talk about in the land of politics and marketing, is this: people are meaning-seeking machines. Yes. We're looking for meaning, and the problem is, in our freaking society, we're pulled in millions of different directions every day. Most people don't have any real meaning in their life, so they're looking to attach meaning. And they only can attach meaning if they can feel like they can get behind something and fight for it. Therefore, there must be an enemy. And that's why when you're going, how can these people support this leader or this politician? That's why. They don't necessarily agree with. They're just going to fight for this. And they may end. There's a lot of people who are going to be what I talked about recently in an interview, was they're going to end up being the good Germans. And people said, what's a good German? I said, the good Germans are the people who sort of went along with it.
That's right.
They were good people, and they didn't say much because there was nothing to fight for until there was. And so this is the key. And I love that you're bringing this up, because I don't honestly believe people speak about this enough. And I think that leaders, corporate or otherwise, are often afraid to name the enemy.
Let me tell you, we've now done this across the board, 20 different types of comparative ad campaigns for our corporate clients. Guess what we're 20-0 on in the A/B testing realm? The comparative ad finishes first every single time.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. If you're a business owner or marketer out there listening to this, this one idea will win every single time if you do it right. It's very easy to screw it up too. But if you do it right, see, and the way I say to do it right is I look at the data, and the data tells me your customer base won't be offended by this particular comparative ad. They'll actually rally around it. They'll support it. It actually makes a deeper connection with them. And, you know, again, in politics, is 50% of my marketplace is offended by my ad. That's okay.
Yep.
That's okay. And in business, you can't have that. And I get that. You never want anything over 5%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you have to find is that niche. And man, I mean, I was, you've heard of the Traffic and Conversion Summit. Well, those guys have
just last time. I was there in March.
Yeah. What's that?
I was there in March.
Oh, great. All right. Well, those guys, Ryan and Roland and all those guys and Perry, they had a conference last week in LA, and I was out there. And they asked everybody at this huge digital marketing conference, submit your best idea and you can come up on stage and throw it out to everybody. So I submitted the comparison advertising idea, and guess what? They chose me, and I got on stage and I explained this to everybody, and I tried to tell people like it will crush if you do it right every time. Yeah.
Now, you know, I was saying, if you really want to understand marketing as a leader, and you've got to have my work is you've got to have your purpose, and you've got to have the anti-purpose, which is the enemy you're working against. You have experienced this at a very personal level because you have a purpose and you have an anti-purpose. The enemy you've come up against, you've been battling, you know, I said it in the intro, 7 years in this battle. Tell us a little bit about that enemy and that battle.
Well, I was diagnosed probably 7 years ago, but really I probably had the disease a lot longer than that. I just didn't know it. But I was diagnosed with a rare esophageal disease called Achalasia. Basically, the nerves and the muscles do not work in my esophagus. They'll never work the rest of my life. It's an incurable disease. Eating is a big chore for me because everything sticks. I've had 3 major surgeries on my esophagus. I've had 15 minor procedures. My esophagus looks like an upside down pom-pom. It's been shredded to pieces. And, you know, I basically, for the first 5 years of the disease, I didn't address it. This is my life, my health. And I put my head in the sand like a lot of these business owners are doing right now in the disruptive markets. And I just said, I'm not going to deal with this. The doctors tell me to take medication. They tell me, you know, there's nothing I can do. I don't, you know, and to be honest with you, psychologically, I just didn't want to deal with it. Right. Sure. And so I just put my head in the sand. I did nothing about it. And after my 3rd major surgery, I went back, I was at the Mayo Clinic, treated the Mayo Clinic. And they said, I said, you know, doctor, I know it's incurable, but like, what is the long-term thought process, prognosis? And he said, well, Phillip, you're going to have your esophagus removed at some point. It is, and I'm 45 now, I was diagnosed in my 30s. Most of the people that have this are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I guess I'm an outlier. Part
of the plan, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. So, and I went, removed? He said, yeah, and a good chance you'll be in a feeding tube next 5 to 10 years. And so I drove home from the Mayo Clinic and I said, I don't accept this. And I didn't know what that meant, right?
No.
And so the first thing I did was I did something I had never done in the history of the diagnosis of the disease. I came home and I Googled it. Seriously.
Nobody's
I'm
ever
not
done
making
that.
that up. That's how stupid I was. I had never Googled the damn disease. So I Googled the disease and I read a little bit about it, and I realized it's a 2-front process. In order to keep my esophagus intact, I needed to improve my diet. It was probably an autoimmune disease which attacked my esophagus and killed it. And so something was going on in my diet that didn't work. So number 2 is there ever a way to get this thing functioning again? And so I thought about it for months and months and months. And then I was with Peter Diamandis, who runs this mastermind called the Abundance 360 Conference. And he gets on stage, Dove, and he says, I want everybody to take out their notebook and write down a moonshot, you know, something that people say is impossible and you'll make possible. And I'm at this business conference and I write down, I'll find a cure to the disease in 5 years. Now, again, the ignorance of an entrepreneur is actually a beautiful thing, because
it is.
A rare disease that has no research dollars behind it is not going to be cured by a typical health professional. So I wrote an article in Inc. magazine, and from that, some woman who ran some foundation on this particular disease, read it. I guess she got a Google, and she reached out to me and said, "Are you crazy? You don't know what you're talking about. There's no cure. There's never going to be a cure. And I said, I know. And she said, "Well, let me call some doctors." And so she finds this doctor at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and he's been working on the disease for 20 years. And she puts me in touch with him. And within a month, the doctor and I say, "Let's go and make this thing a reality." And that was 2.5 years ago. It is a long process to get anything like this done. But in the spring of 2019, I started a one-man, first ever clinical trial where they were going to extract stem cells out of my leg, my thigh. They were going to grow them, culture them, and grow them into the millions, and then insert the stem cells into my esophagus to try to make all the muscle fibers connect and regenerate the muscles and the nerves.
Wow.
That started in April of 2019. In July of 2019, they reached out and said, there has been a contamination in the lab.
Oh my God.
And so we need to start over. So we will start over sometime in the future. What will happen is once the extraction happens and the biopsy happens, it's another 4 or 5 months process where they'll grow the stem cells. And then we're thinking sometime in 2020, we'll start the clinical trial again. But it all started with me feeling pity and sorry for myself, not addressing my own health. The other side of this is my diet is, I got my diet in order. I work with I don't know if you ever heard of an author named Stephen Gundry, who wrote the book, The Plant Paradox. And
it's Stephen Gundry's work.
Insane diet, but it has saved and changed my life so much that I have an incurable disease and I take no medication for it anymore because of the diet. And I was in LA last week doing an interview on Gundry's podcast because I guess this is a unique story. But it all started because I ate poorly. I didn't take care of my health. And when, the diagnosis came, I did nothing about it, stuck my head in the sand. And so I have a lot of empathy for business owners that say, I know the world's changing. I don't know how to get there, and I'd rather not do anything about it and run the old print ads, run some TV ads, and I'm like, no, you got to go where the data tells you to go and your marketing. And so I'm trying to help people, especially business owners and marketers, kind of out of that sort of rut, because it's sort of my purpose now, is because I know how it feels and I want to help people not feel that way.
But it's a wonderful metaphor for us to pay attention to, because, I've talked a lot about those moments that change your life. I fell off a mountain, and I always say to people, I fell 120 feet, 12 stories, while free climbing from a mountain as my wake up call. And that woke me up. But I also say, but here's what you need to know. That was my fourth fall.
Right.
Because I'm thick. Like the rest of us, I don't want to deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. Yeah. And my best advice to you is to don't wait to fall off a mountain. Don't wait to get diagnosed before you pay attention. And I see that the diagnosis is written on the wall in red letters. Change is coming. And as you said, people are going, well, I'll just run a couple of print ads. Well, I think my people really want to hear about this.
Or we've always done it this way.
That's the death rattle, right? Yeah. The death rattle is we've always done it this way. But one of the things that, I really think is important for us to grasp is not only that, we've always done it this way is a recipe for horrible failure. As Marshall Goldsmith said, what got you here won't get you there.
Great book.
Right? Great book. But the fact of the matter is you have to recognize that it is part of the human psychology to resist change. So part of the acceptance is not accepting the change, but accepting your own resistance. It's going, well, of course I'm resistant.
And I still do this every day. There's some, every day there'll be something that I'm being resistant to. I get it. I understand how that feels. I do want to say on the disease, as crazy as this sounds, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And that is honest to God truth. I don't think I led a very purpose-driven life beforehand. I don't think I treated the people that work for me very well. I don't think, I know I didn't treat them very well.
Right.
I wasn't the best husband. I definitely wasn't the best father. The focus that the disease put on my life said, I only get one chance at this. And either I'm going to do things right and I'm going to take that challenge every day. And Tony Robbins has a great quote, the quality of your life is, somehow in the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably tolerate, right? And I realize that there's a lot of truth to that. And so I try to put myself in as many uncertain and uncomfortable places as possible. And that's changing my wiring at 45 years old. I'm changing the wiring of what I know, how to be a better husband and father and a boss. And that was a struggle for me for a long, long time. And I always blamed everybody else. Actually, I'd tell you this, I was probably the worst kind of narcissist back in the, about 10 years ago, the one that blamed everybody that has no growth.
Right.
So, to overcome that, now I know I have the rest of my life that I get to live incredibly passionate, and that wouldn't have happened without the disease. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, but Phil, one of the things I really want everybody to grasp is that the disease, it's not the disease, it's that choice you made. I've often spoken about that we have a pivotal moment. My pivotal moment was falling off the mountain.
Sure.
People say that changed it. No, it didn't. That deeply embedded me in my ego. It didn't. It's only at the moment later when I can return to normal. It's that moment of choice. It's not the pivotal moment. It's the moment of choice that comes later where we wake up and go, you know what? I can jump right back on that train. I can go back into the workaholic mode. I can be a dick with everybody. I can do all those kinds of things, but I'm going to choose not to. Why? Because I'm going to choose to actually look at the meaning of this for me and how that impacts the way that I am. And so that brought you to that. Because the truth of the matter is, you could have gone, okay, well, now I'm on Gundry's diet. My, things are doing good. I'm not taking my meds. Let's go back to treating people like crap, and let's get the next president elected, right? You could do that.
Good.
And be without any sense of, it being any of your own responsibility. And so often I see people who have massive heart attacks or horrible diagnoses, or somebody divorces them, or they go bankrupt, and they weep into their conflicts for a couple of months, and then they go back to doing the same old stuff. And I'm like, damn. Listen, this was a wake-up call. And if you don't wake up when you get the wake-up call, eventually the universe will kick you in the head. You've got a choice. Pay attention.
And it goes back to the whole theme of what we talked about. Like, I think the reason I'm so passionate about understanding data is that for a long time, I didn't think about how others felt. I didn't come at it from their perspective. It was always my perspective, which is a natural. That's what 99% of people do. So I became obsessed with, how do people think? How can I serve them in the way that they want to be served, rather than me just telling them they need to be served in this particular way. And it really, honestly, if you want to know the root of where I come from with when I would scream and holler about data, it's really that, because I was the worst at it. And I had to change. And once I changed, I realized how much more meaningful the relationships were in my own life, from my family to my friends, when I thought about how they thought first and how I communicated to them.
That's very interesting. In the business of political marketing, I guess the final audit is the vote, right? That's the final audit. How do we know along the way, because we talked about the polls being wrong, how do we along the way, when I say we, as I'm talking about business leaders, find out at a simple level what it is that we're doing, if it works? Because particularly in the world of advertising, it seems to work. Now we can do better because we can check the amount of clicks, but how can we audit our own? Like, is there a way that you can guide us to audit for ourselves and check, or is there some process? I know you have a way of doing it.
Yeah, we do. This is, and it's free for your audience, by the way, but we have a free marketing audit. And this is this is one way you can do it, right? If you go, and I'm sure it'll be in your show notes, but it's phillipstutts.com/audit. We have a 9-page checklist of things that businesses are doing right and things they can improve on their digital. We just literally, my team will spend, it's crazy. I don't know why I ever committed to this, but I totally did. And I'm honoring it every way. But My team spends 2 business days poring over any company that comes through, all of their publicly available digital footprint. They produce a 9-page checklist. They deliver the checklist with a free 30-minute consultation call. Now, I know what everybody's thinking. Here's the thing. If you think that's a great service and you think that for free you get all of that and you want to like work with us, that's cool. We can talk about that. If you don't, and 75% of people take it and go do their own thing, that's cool too.
Sure.
But that's one way that we, in my business, we do it. We have a marketing audit that we put forth that has been really helpful for every business because we can tell you the fundamentals of what you're doing right and wrong. On the other side, look, again, when you go back to the data, like if you don't have a marketing agency out there that is completely transparent, I mean, this is why the book is called Fire Them Now, right? Because it's about transparency and putting the business first. And only when the business succeeds does the marketer make money and succeed. And in politics, we get this, right? When a candidate loses election, that doesn't help me. The candidate must win the election, and then I can use that to leverage to bigger clients, better clients, or I keep that candidate that just won election as a client for another 2 or 4 years, right? So I never get this in the marketing world. I started doing corporate marketing, and Dove, I was just like blown away. Like, I'll give you the one of the lies in my book that I lay out, and it doesn't make, I mean, you would think, where did that come from? But it's not a tactic and it's not a strategy. It is simply a contractual thing. Every contract I've ever had in 24 years of politics has been month to month. A candidate can fire me at any time if I'm not performing for them. I must put their needs first, and only when they succeed do I succeed. And so when I met with, I interviewed over 100 business owners for the book, and every one of them had at some point been locked into some long-term contract with a marketing agency. And sometimes it worked, most of the times it didn't, and they had to wait until the contract ran out before they could fire the marketing agency. Well, the marketing firm won before the business did. And I just said, well, that's not appropriate. So like our company, every contract's month to month. Like, you can fire me at any time if you don't think I'm doing my job. So for me, that's how we audit internally. Like, if the business owner isn't satisfied, that's how you do it. If a business owner listening to this podcast right now, I would demand that your marketing agency go month to month. Then you win the game of marketing, and they don't.
But part of the argument in that, because I've had marketing agencies and PR companies, and the argument is, well, you know, this is a long-term thing. You can't see the results for 4, 5, 6 months. So you need to hire us on a 6-month basis, because then we're going to be able to see. I mean, I imagine so many leaders are watching this or listening to this and going, well, you know, you can't give you automatic instant and tell you.
That's right. 100%. And then that's where transparency comes in. So with me, first of all, the data is completely transparent. We write a plan that everybody works on and agrees to. And then we start A/B testing. And by the way, in those A/B testing phases with using the data that we learn, we have dashboards that the company and the business owner can sit there and look at everything. And if we're not optimizing for success every day, changing the ads, tweaking the language, figuring out sometimes the backgrounds of colors are green work better than the backgrounds with red. And we've done this over and over again. Like, we're constantly focused on the optimization. And you're right. I cannot guarantee success for a few months. We have to run through this process. But because we're transparent and because we tell them from the beginning, this is how it works, our clients stick with us. But any client that works with me has a 100% money back guarantee after the first month. So I return their money if they don't think I'm on the up and up. I've never had to refund the money, but it's there. So I keep saying, like, I have to eliminate. You know what? Here's the deal, and you'll so appreciate this stuff. Business owners hate marketers.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. And so my point was, how can I take back control and help business owners see marketers as what they really are, which is, these guys are the reason I'm going to grow my business is because of my marketing, nothing else. And so I had to eliminate all the risk for them all along the way, so that when everything starts jamming and working and going crazy, that's when I'm successful. Other than that, I don't really make that much money until that point.
Well, you were on Gary Vee's show, and Gary has a line that he said years ago that I loved when I first saw him speak, which I think was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And he said, marketers ruin everything. And he's a marketer, right? So I was like, that's awesome, right? Marketing. He goes, Facebook. He goes, it was great, but Twitter, it was great. We ruined it. It's really good, right?
That's right.
As a as a political marketer, and you worked on these campaigns and you've had enormous success, and then that's transferred over to business. What is the most common misunderstanding about what it is that you do? Because I think there's probably a lot of misunderstandings about what it is.
I would say the two things: speed and targeting. Speed and this. Let me just kind of give you my mindset. There was an election last year in Utah, a congressional race, and it was Mia Love versus Ben McAdams. That was the guy, and Mia Love was the incumbent. She had won before, and there were like 269,000 plus votes in the race, and the race came down to 694 votes. Ben McAdams beat Mia Love by 694 votes at a 269,000 plus cast, I think. And my question to you is, the misconception is like, I don't like the businesses that go, well, let's just talk about some brand management and let's talk about it for 2 weeks and run a bunch of meetings and talk about some things and then we'll go huddle. And like, when I tell you that example, that an entire race comes down to 694 transactions.
Yes.
And if I were to take your business and your number one competitor, and I was to tell you have 5 months, that's how long that campaign lasted, right, that you have a certain amount of budget, that there would be 269,234 customer transactions, that the winner of this race would come down to 694 transactions. And the company that finishes first is number one in the market. The company that finishes second is out of business forever, because that's how it is in politics, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Or you can't start your business for 2 more years.
Wow.
How fast would you go? How fast would you innovate? How fast would you move? Everything comes down to that. And so the misconception is that, it's mainly on my part. Like, I didn't realize when I went into corporate marketing how bureaucratic it is, whereas in politics there's no bureaucracy. A candidate hires us and on day one we are out there running that formula at 100 miles an hour, and on the business side it's just much slower. And the other part is just targeting. Like, everything we think about, the foundation of all the things we do is targeting. It's not as I said this in the book, it's not a Mountain Dew commercial where people are in waterfalls drinking Mountain Dew and having fun. For me, I want a deep understanding of segmented audiences to deliver messages to those segmented audiences on what they care about with your brand or product. And so that for me, like, I'm not in this I make beautiful ads. I do it when the data tells me those are the ads that have to be run. And so for most business owners, that's a hard concept for them to wrap their arms around.
So it sounds like the number one mistake we as leaders are making is, well, I mean, obviously we're not moving fast enough. That's clear. But we're also not paying attention to the data. We're just not, right?
Most are. I mean, I can't tell you, like, we do all these calls with business owners and they're like, well, we looked at our Facebook stats and our Google Analytics. I'm like, no, it's not it. But that makes them feel good for the moment. And then they go down that path. And then 6 months later, they call us and say, okay, how do we do it the right way? If that makes sense.
I had a discussion with a publishing agent. She wanted to pick up my book. Right, my next book.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, you don't have a lot of Twitter followers. And I go, and she goes, well, that really matters to the publishers. I go, and the publishers are idiots. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, because nobody gives a shit. I said, right. I have friends on there who have over 1 million followers, and I know they bought 500,000 followers. Right. I know they did that.
Of course.
They're not interacting. They're not engaged. They're eggs. They go, oh, the publishers count that. Well, then the publishers are idiots, because that's not real data, right? So that's the other thing, is that the vanity piece, because it strokes my ego to say, well, I've got 25,000 people following me on Instagram. Well, I can buy those. I don't. I have 2,500 very engaged individuals.
That's right.
That's a very different group than, and I have 20-odd thousand on LinkedIn, but they're interacting on my posts every single day. I think this is the other thing. I mean, I'm not in your business, and I can't imagine how frustrating that is to throw vanity metrics versus connection.
So you're speaking my language, brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wanting you to know. I get it. And, you know, I have literally, I've had the same conversations. And, you know, I'll be honest with you. We have a marketing team. We promote all the things I do. But I'm also, I think in the outlier way. And the outlier way tells me that the world we're living in right now, where that's valued, is a fucked up world.
Yeah.
And I don't want to play in that. I'm going to go in a different direction. And the different direction is going to have much more, just like you, much more caring, connected people that we can share messages and learn from each other, not just me barking what I want to talk about.
Yeah. This has been a great combo, and we're already whizzing through, and I want to get to the quickfire round. Is that okay with you?
I'm all ready. Let's go.
Fabulous. What are you most curious about right now?
You know, I am most curious. Okay, this quick fire. We are doing a lot of work for a lot of different businesses, B2B, B2C, e-com, all this stuff. But the B2C and e-com feels so natural to me because they feel like voters. And so what I'm fascinated by is that in politics, when we get hired, we run everything. We run everything from, you know, connected TV ads to the digital ads to the traditional ads, all that stuff. The corporate space literally has a niche for everything humanly possible. There is a guy that does an advertising agency that just helps truck drivers or truck driving companies. The niches are fascinating to me. So I've really enjoyed studying all the niches and learning in that process. I'm just kind of obsessed with it right now.
That's pretty cool. What, in a world where everybody seems to be offended by just about anything, what's your bravest opinion?
I think I probably just shared it, which is that I believe that as a digital marketer, that social media is bullshit and is overexposed, and there will be a crash like the economy coming soon. And I believe the true survivors of this particular disruption are the people that have built deeper connections and actually care about the people they interact with. That the social media is only good as the connection that's built. And if you're helping someone else. And I know that's cliched and all that goober stuff, but I'm telling you, there's a coming crash on the social media platforms. I don't know whether it's through governments shutting them down or regulating them or whatever, but there's a massive disruption coming soon. And, you know, if you're in the marketing field, you need to prepare for it. Yeah,
it's a very interesting piece because one of the things that everybody forgets is the disruptors will be disrupted. And this is what, Blockbuster Video was a disruptor.
Sure.
People don't forget that. They talk about Netflix, but you go, hold on.
That's true.
Blockbuster was the disruptor.
That's right.
For the general VHS video stores, Blockbuster was the disruptor. It was massive. And then came Netflix. Well, guess what? Amazon Prime came.
Oh, that's right. They're being disrupted. That's right.
Streaming everywhere.
One example, can I give you one? Like,
yeah,
I was in LA last week for this conference and seeing country, and I had lunch with an Instagram influencer. And I asked her, well, what are you doing? Like, she's like, I get $10,000, $15,000 for one post, right? And I'm like, Jesus, that's incredible. I said, what are you doing to expand that? What are you building businesses around it? What are you doing? She's like, no, I'm just posting. And I'm like, you've been doing this for 3 years. You have an expiration date. It doesn't mean your brand goes away, but your brand must expand into other markets. You must build products and services around that. And some of those won't work, but one or two will, and then you're able to sustain those for 20, 30, 40 years. That's what's going to be disrupted. And I'm not saying influencers, they're very important. Trust me, and some of my clients, holy cow, the influencers are massive for us.
Sure.
So I'm good with that. That's not a criticism, but you have to keep evolving and keep innovating. And the people that just think that these platforms are going to stay the way they are completely wrong, in my opinion.
But again, I just, one of the things I'm driving home to my clients often is, please understand, it's great to be a disruptor, but the disruptors will be disrupted.
100%.
And it's very easy to put your feet up once you've disrupted and go, oh, it's no problem because we just killed it. Yeah, you did. Fantastic. Eat the meat and then go hunt again, because if you don't, somebody's going to come along and hunt you. And that's all there is to it. So that's a really great piece of advice. What makes Phillip Stutts cry?
So it's a good question. I would tell you I cried like a baby yesterday because my best friend has ALS. And I spent some time with him, and I realized how much I loved him, how important he is, and how grateful I am that that person was in my life, and it is still in my life. But I think when I see people that I really care about in pain and hurting, that's probably what drives me the most, crying.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because that's always the place where we feel least powerful, power.
Yeah, totally.
Like, shit, I can't do anything.
Which is why you need to live your life with purpose and service and honesty and dignity, because it can be gone tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we come to the end, two last questions. First is, what makes you cry laughing?
Anytime I'm with my old buddies and we just sit around drinking, something that I probably shouldn't. Maybe that's my guilty pleasure. Isn't that where you're going next? And telling the stories of the past.
Telling war stories.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll let you off with the guilty pleasures, and I'll ask you this. Before we finish, I always want to know, tell us something that, I always want people to walk away and go, okay, I got to do something here, because podcasts play in the background. People are doing all kinds of stuff and get distracted. And I want them to go away and say, okay, if I only caught this bit, I should go away and do that. What's the thing we should do, Phillip?
It's going to round back everything we've talked about.
Of course.
You've got to make a deeper connection with your customer or your client base. The way that I do it is I try to understand how they function, how they think, what motivates them, and where they are. The way to do that is finding out through data, right? There are other ways you can do that don't cost money, right? You can do survey monkeys on your client base, but you're going to get what they say, not what they do. But That's still better than doing nothing. So do something to understand how other people think and feel, and deliver in the way that makes them feel great.
Fantastic. Phillip, I have loved our conversation. Thank you, sir. It's been an honor.
Oh man, I'm totally honored.
Yeah.
This is one of those bucket list podcasts, so I'm grateful.
You're very kind.
I waited a long time for it.
You have. And you've been on the big ones, so I'm really honored. Thank you. It's been really great.
All right,
and if our viewers and listeners want to find out more about you and all your wonderful resources, please tell them where to go specifically. Yeah,
our company is called winbigmedia.com, or you can go to phillipstutts.com. You can take that free marketing audit if you're interested, but you can contact me through there as well. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Hope you'll stay with us to the end. And you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by simply going to Facebook and looking for Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. By now, you can hire me, Dov Barron, as your speaker or strategist by going to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. Be aware that the research consistently shows that the fastest growing companies face the same challenges you do. They're spending time, money, energy, and effort attracting, training, and developing their top talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're frustrated with investing in the training and development of your talent, only to have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. You can also stop by the Matrix, which is matrix like the movie .fullmontyleadership.com, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It shows you how to tap into the 5 areas of leadership and find out where your real strengths are. It's valued at $197. You get it absolutely free. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. And so in finishing, I want to say, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious. Not about what your customer says, but about what they're really doing. Do you really know? And how do you know? Have you taken the time to get to know them truly, deeply? That's an audit you really want to take.
I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.